My name is Beatrice Adu. The news is also live on Kesmi 107.1 FM and across the world at 3news.com. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Ghana Revenue Authority to strictly enforce income tax law for Ghanaians who live abroad but spend a cumulative 183 days in the country to make up for revenue shortfalls. Also, government hopeful of receiving third tranche of $360 million from the IMF in barely 2 months. But the global financial institution is once again pointing to the need for an agreement with Ghana's external creditors. And much later on this program, civil society groups in the environment sector are pushing for an immediate withdrawal of 2 legal instruments which they say continue to make Ghana's government's Green Ghana initiative irrelevant. Thank you very much for joining us now. Ghana Revenue Authority will strictly enforce income tax law for Ghanaians who live abroad but spend a cumulative 183 days in the country to make up for revenue shortfalls as a result of the suspension of the VAT on electricity. The nation is set to lose some 1.8 billion cedis for its decision to put the VAT on hold, causing the government to turn to this tax measure to make up for the shortfall. Let's look at the current law as it is. Section 3 of the Income Tax Act 2015 Act 896. This is what a portion of it says. The assessable income of a person for a year of assessment from any employment, business or investment is A. In the case of a resident person, the income of that person from each employment, business or investment for the year, whether or not the source from which the income is derived has ceased. Now, Section 101 of the same resident person says an individual is resident in the country for the year of assessment if that individual is B, present in the country during that year for an aggregate period of 183 days or more in any 12-month period that commences or ends during that year. Now, we can listen to Julie Isiam, Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority, speak on the need to enforce the existing law.
The measure that we have to put in place has to be a sustainable, clearly defined measure to replace the 1.8 and beyond. So the measure that we put in place is a compliance measure on foreign income of resident Ghanaians. Resident Ghanaians, please, resident Ghanaians. Okay. This measure is already in the law, as Minister said, so it is not a new measure. The difference is that its implementation and application has not been implemented effectively. So in order for us to implement this measure, we have gone through with the aid and assistance of the OECD, gone through credible and sustainable processes and structures to ensure that when we implement this measure, the sustainability of this measure is going to go beyond 2024. In our revenue numbers. So this is the measure that, together with GOG and our mother ministry, the Ministry of Finance, is going to take place or is going to replace the VAT on electricity. And we're not hopeful, we're confident on the sustainability of this measure and its credibility to replace the 1.8 billion. Thank you very much.
You heard Julie Isiam. She's Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority. We can listen to the Finance Minister, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, saying the IMF program could suffer if the revenue shortfall is not addressed.
We are determined to effectively implement these measures to generate the desired revenue to fill in the gap created as a result of the suspension of the VAT. Now, what this means is that when we take a decision as a government, which borders on our fiscal framework, there are consequences. And the consequences could be dire unless we are proactive enough to find ways to fill in the gap and avoid those consequences. One of the consequences could be that you miss out on the target, the fiscal targets, and the IMF program then suffers. And the country is then returned to challenges, economic challenges that we all have been trying to prevent since we signed on to this program. The other consequences could be for people to pay more taxes. And we are determined to go out there and collect the taxes from those who have not been paying, those who have been evading taxes. We are going to go after them. And we are also pursuing reforms within the tax administration.
Finance Minister Dr. Amin Adam there, and we'll be bringing you analysis shortly, but let's stay a bit longer on what he mentioned about the IMF and International Monetary Fund. Says that it expects the government of Ghana to reach an agreement with its creditors to trigger the release of the $360 million. This was announced by the IMF after it announced reaching a staff-level agreement on the second review of Ghana's economic recovery program. Now, the government is hopeful of receiving the third tranche in barely 2 months. IMF Mission Chief Stefan Hode has been explaining what it would take for the government to the board approval to be obtained.
Review to the board. And so if you look back now, the domestic debt restructuring has been completed. When it comes to the external debt, a lot of progress has been made in the discussions with bilateral creditors. An agreement in principle has been reached in January, and the authorities have accelerated, most recently over the past few months, engagement with commercial creditors and bondholders in particular. If you look forward, what I refer to in terms of what we need to go to the board refers to the engagement with the bilateral creditors. It's about formalizing the agreement in principle and agreeing on a memorandum of understanding so that we can proceed with the board meeting. What we can say on that is that very good progress is being made, and we are quite confident that this will be done in a timely manner. As far as the bondholders are concerned, what we need is to continue to see progress similar to what we have seen in recent months. The standard for us to be able to go to the board is that the government makes good faith effort to reach an agreement that is compatible with the program objectives and the program parameters, and this is definitely what we are seeing at the current juncture.
You heard that Stefan Hode. He is IMF Chief Mission to Ghana, explaining to us what it would take the government to obtain that executive board approval. Let's bring in Professor Lord Mensah. He's an economist. Good afternoon to you, Prof. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon to our listeners.
Prof, government has passed the second review, but there's still the need to deal with external creditors. Has this taken too long, especially when an MOU was signed in January and in April? The IMF is still pointing to this as a challenge?
Yeah, I think we may have to be clear on the breakdown of our external debt. I mean, what we had earlier, the agreement, was a bilateral debt agreement. But then we have commercial and then other, debt that we may have to deal with. And that one we've not, gotten to a point where there is even an MOU between, the counterparties. I mean, if I say counterparties, I mean the government and those, creditors out there. So we still have a long way to go, when it comes to, this agreement. And we have to appreciate that those external creditors, especially when it comes to the Euro bond, they are well, diverse. They are not, one group that you are dealing with or one country like the bilateral debt, or different countries that can come together. So we still have, some time to deal with this. And government is in a process, all right, but when we can get to a convergent point between the parties, I can't tell as we speak now.
But domestically, though, the government is trying to do something. I'm sure you heard about the tax that it wants to implement. It says that because we suspended the VAT on electricity, the country is losing some 1.8 billion cedis. Do you anticipate the tax from those who are living out of the country and the rest of the measures they are domestically putting in place to help us bring in that 1.8 billion cedis that we've lost because of the suspension of the VAT on electricity?
Yeah, this is a law that has been in existence for some time, and it's just going to be activated. And I'm wondering whether the government will be able to use this to rake in the 1.8 billion that is being lost. But let's, be straightforward to government and for them to understand that it's not only about revenue enhancement that will, get us, stuck into the program. We should also look at expenditure cuts, and I'm wondering what the government is doing about our expenditure cuts. Well, if you go through the program, it talks about expenditure rationalization and then, reduction. But we don't see anything, we don't hear anything. All that we hear about is, we've missed out this tax, we are going to replace it from this end, and we are likely to, meet the 1.8 billion. With the structures that we have in terms of identification and all those, I'm wondering whether we'll be able to meet that 1.8 billion. Probably it may not, hit that optimum target of that 1.8 billion, but over time it can. But I can tell you that initially they're going to struggle in the implementation of such taxes because of identification of those residents who are supposed to be, exposed to such taxes.
Expenditure cuts you're proposing, how realistic is that, especially in an election year like this?
Yeah, of course. We all know. It needs a sacrifice, and we should understand that out of, IMF program, some government lost power. And so we need to sacrifice and then push away our political interests, to save the country. And if we really want to save the country, it's about, pushing away our political interests. I know it will not be politically wise to reduce expenditure at this moment, but let's think about the country first.
So let's talk about the income tax for those who are living abroad. Wouldn't that be double tax? Is that not too much for those who are living outside?
Well, there are key indicators that will be looked out for. You should be a citizen that has lived in the country. There are some numbers that they are looking out for in terms of number of days that you've spent out there and all those. So if they're able to properly identify this, they should be able to, collect the taxes as expected. It will be a double tax. Every citizen, one way or the other, is exposed to double tax. Even in the country, you are exposed to double tax. You're looking at your payee, what you pay on your employment, and then you look at excise tax when you go to the pump to purchase. You enjoy some lotteries and other things in the country. So we should expect this to happen. But I can tell you that it's going to be looking at the parameters that define this, residents who are supposed to be taxed. I don't think it will be easy. They will be easy to be identified.
We'll have to end it here. Thank you very much, Professor Lord Mensah. He's an economist. Thank you for speaking to us. Let's bring in again the Finance Minister, Amin Adam, who is saying that the government will be more aggressive in its negotiations going forward to conclude discussions.
Ruth, as you rightly said, the negotiations are ongoing, and over the last 2 months, we'll be more aggressive in our negotiation with the commercial creditors and the bond holders, the Eurobond holders. And we are very confident that if things go the way they are, we certainly will reach a deal at some point. But what is significant is that in all these negotiations, we are mindful about the fiscal targets. We are mindful about the debt sustainability targets because we do not want to reach a deal which falls outside the program targets for debt sustainability. And this is guiding all the negotiations that we are doing with our bondholders. Let me say that the NDA we have signed with the bondholders is supposed to expire somewhere on Monday, and we'll provide updates at the end of the NDA on the progress we have made, the working formula we have and our determination to continue to negotiate to the level where we can have a deal that is acceptable to all of us, but that also does not deviate from the IMF program targets for debt sustainability.
Finance Minister Dr. Amin Azam there. Now, civil society organizations in the environment sector have questioned the genuineness of the government Green Ghana initiative, saying the exercise has become a mere rhetoric, not yielding any relevant impact across the country. This comes as government launches the 2024 edition of the Green Ghana Day in Tamale on Tuesday, April 16. Now, the eco-conscious citizens and the Ghana Environment Advocacy Group says that the yearly campaign appears to be a cynical public relations exercise overseeing massive destruction of forest reserves and vegetation covers. They are demanding the immediate withdrawal of EI 144 and LI 2462, as well as an audit of parks and gardens lands across the country. Let's go on to the phone lines and speak to Awula Sewa of the Eco-Conscious Citizens. Good afternoon to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Why these demands, especially when the government has rated this initiative as successful so far?
Well, the government may say it's successful, but whether it's successful or not is an entirely different matter. What we are saying is that for it to be successful, what you want to do is to add to the existing trees you have. You don't want to get rid of the trees you have and then purport to be greening Ghana. So we've given concrete examples. We've said, for example, that you can't have EI 144 declassifying, that is removing parts of the forest from the forest reserve in Achimota. And then you cannot have LI 2462, which allows virtually unfettered access to our forest reserve for mining and logging, which will be a reduction of the trees we have. You cannot have community mining, that is an illegal mine that's destroying our trees and forests. And then you say you are what? Greening Ghana. You see, it looks like with one hand, you are purporting to green Ghana, and then with the other hand, you are destroying the existing greenery we have. Look at parks and gardens across Ghana. Encroachment, 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 with complicity from those who should know better. That's why we say that it's like the arsonists masquerading as firefighters.
I'll go back to the illegal mining bit, but if you say complicity on the part of parks and gardens, what exactly? What evidence?
No, on the part of parks and gardens, on the part of those who should be protecting the lands of parks and gardens.
And who are those?
How do private developers say that they have leases of parks and gardens land? It's not parks and gardens who are giving it out. We have to ask Land Commission, how come in WA, for instance, they are saying that a private developer has leased a portion of the land to put up a petrol station? That smacks of complicity. That is what we are talking about.
Are you being fair to the government when you mention the bit of illegal mining, when you know the multifaceted and how complicated dealing with this matter is? It doesn't just take the lands ministry that is sitting on top there to go to the communities. When you have people who are leading foreigners to our forests, when you have chiefs who are giving portions to these foreigners to mine.
You see, I'm being extremely fair.
Excuse me, ma'am? Hello? Okay, it seems we've lost Awula Sewa on the line. Hello, ma'am, are you still on the line with us? Okay, it seems we've lost her on the line. We'll try and reconnect to her. Hello?
Hello, ma'am.
All right, we'll try and reconnect to her and bring you, conclude that conversation. You're still here on the Midday News on 3FM. When we come back, we'll bring you some more from across the country. Don't go away.
I don't know what media was here. Adam of what you have come when we say, yet you drew back up a ship we be a high technology. I could for freeze up when Kwan and once open your 15 letters. No fugum, what ya no fugum. What the boss here? For you be any of us, you equity say, over Timono. Then we sure say, mention Tassia. Then what's enough for now? Freezer, power up at the freezer.
Basia, a person does so among Ammoniaji.
Me, me what's it car? Me, but you may not do some doom. Adama, with that Adama, no, Adama, you can't resist.
Ubenya Adama West Africa for a dream, or baby bear a tongue cry on you. I say, Kayona Kinka in Choya, a dream.
And you're still here on the Midday News on 3FM. Thank you for staying. Now, as concerns over GMOs continue to reverberate across Ghana, Food Sovereignty Ghana and the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana have come together in a unified front. Their message, a resounding no to genetically modified organisms. Advocating for the rights of Ghanaian citizens, these organizations are championing the cause of organic food as the optimal choice for both health and wealth. Emmanuel Samani is flowing this story for us. He joins us live on the line. Emmanuel will be joining us very shortly, but ahead of that, transport operators in Tamale are unhappy about the delay in the leadership of the transport unions to increase transport fares. They say that hikes in fuel and cost of spare parts are affecting their businesses. My colleague Christopher Mwako has been engaging tricycle operators and taxi drivers in the metropolis, and we can hear some of those drivers there speaking to us earlier.
Because Ghana you are la taxe. Bisha kam yi pas la taxe par exemple. Kabole lan check pa mo ba par. Der le tu ne bisha kam yi zang taxe pa ma ka pa ma den dar dotana. Ba pa ma ba par me tiana. So Ghana yin der te farga shel ma zang ha den yusin ya den te ban ma. So de tu ne bi na te le pa ma nini ka pa ma chang down.
All right, so you heard some drivers there in the Tamale metropolis. I'm joined by Christopher Mwako, who is our Northern Region correspondent. Chris, if you can tell us which language they were speaking and indeed what exactly they said.
So that's Dagbani, and exactly what they are saying is that the issue of hikes in fuel prices is actually affecting their businesses as transport operators, because once the fuel prices go up, it means that it is going to affect them. And when they try to increase their fares, they are always told to wait till their national unions come up with a strategy for them to also increase their transport fares, and that is affecting them. As it stands now, fuel prices have gone up, but they are unable to increase. So all they are saying is that they are calling on their national leadership to fast track the decision for them to increase transport fares. If not, they are running out of business.
They are running out of business, you say, but how about the people who are going to pay for the increased fares? What are they saying?
Yes, so for the people here, they know that once fuel prices go up, it is definitely going to have an impact on them as people who use these transport systems. And so what they are waiting for is to hear from the transport operators whether or not they have increased and how much are they adding to the previous fares that they are paying. That is what they are waiting for. But they are also calling on the transport operators to be moderate in their adjustments, so that it will not affect them as people who use these transport services.
Thank you very much, Christopher Mwako, there bringing us updates from the Northern Region. Pre-tertiary teacher unions, NAT, NAGRAT, and the Coalition of Concerned Teachers have criticized the government for its interference in the affairs of SNET. The unions have therefore called on Parliament and organised labour to take interest in the affairs of SNET in investigating the issues happening or risk jeopardising the confidence and contributions of pensioners. President of the National Association of Graduate Teachers, Angel Kabonu, has been speaking to Labour Affairs correspondent Daniel Opoku.
Our feeling is that the government side is not showing signs that they have any concrete mandate on any of the issues. We are supposed to report to Labour Commission on Wednesday, and we will do just that. However, the dissent and unhappiness at the rank and file down there in the various schools and institutions is very, very high. And from the way things are going, it looks as if we will not be able to hold up the agitation that is simmering at the ground. When you see in a negotiation, if I table a percentage, the other side should table a counter percentage. This is not the first time we have been negotiating. If we bring in an item and you think that item is inappropriate, bring in your counter item. Then we know we are making progress. The Labour Commission is giving us up to Wednesday to report back to it. Are we going to go to the Labour Commission for the Ghana government side to request an extension?
Yeah, that Angel Kabonu, he's the president of NAGRAT. Daniel Opoku is on the line with us. Daniel, what more can you tell us from this?
Well, good afternoon to you, Beatrice. Now, basically, let me say that the instance we played has to do with the teachers who, the pre-teachers union, today have decided it's likely to resume their strike based on what government has been doing. If you could recall, when they embarked on strike, government called them to a meeting, but unfortunately, they have not been able to make any progress with regard to that one. When it comes to the issue about the Senate, now the pre-teacher teacher unions are members of organizations.
I'm sorry, Daniel. You're saying that the teachers will be going back to the strike. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Because when they called off the strike about 2 weeks ago, based on they asking government to be able to conclude their conditions of service, but unfortunately, the subsequent meetings have not been able to yield any maximum results. So as I speak to you, their concern is that all those who attend the meetings, for them to be able to conclude negotiations, so they come to the meeting without any mandate. So obviously, they have decided that by close of this week, if they don't get anything concrete from the offices of government or from the Ministry of Finance, then there's a possibility that they will go back they'll resume their strike. Already, there's growing apprehension and agitations on their front now. You were telling us about the SNIT just very briefly in like 40 seconds. Right. So when we look at the structure of SNIT, organized labor has about 3 members on the SNIT board, and the responses and the comments that they have received from their members indicate that SNIT is not doing very well. So for them to be seen a lot of changes here and there, you have Director General being removed, another person being appointed. The pre-tertiary teacher unions are calling on Parliament to step in now. And they have also been part of the larger body of organized labor. They are calling for emergency meeting for them to have be able to petition the president so that there will be a maximum of proper investigations into the affairs of Senate. Thank you very much, Daniel Opoku. He's our Labour Affairs correspondent. We go to the Northeast region where the flag bearer of the NDC has commenced a 2-day tour of that home region. And indeed, now John Mahama, in recent polls by Global Info Analytics, is in a commanding lead in the Northeast region with voter intentions. This will be the 16th region visited by John Mahama on his Building Ghana Together tour. The former president has been lashing out at President Akufo-Addo over and the Baumia-led administration over issues. Now, in a post on his X account, the NDC flag bearer said that the NPP administration led by President Akufo-Addo has crossed many red lines in Ghana's democratic practice. Komla Kluche is traveling with the former president and joins us live on the phone. Komla, what more can you report from this tour?
Well, so John Mahama has gone to the first place, which is the Eketsi call on the Gambagana. He just moved from there, and he is at the palace of the Nairi just a short while ago. But in speaking at the palace of the Gambaga, now what John Mahama has been speaking about wide range of issues. We know Gambaga, for instance, has been in the news over the years for the witch camp. And what he's been saying essentially is that if he's able to secure the mandate of the people, one of the first things that he will do is to tax his wife, the first lady, to be directly in charge of issues that borders on the witchcraft so that they are able to totally eradicate the human rights issue that has to be dealt with once and for all. He also spoke about security within the region and made the assurance that he is going to establish military camps in all the newly formed 6 regions that add up to the 16 regions of Ghana so that they are able to put some adequate security measures in place and also ensure that there's an anti-armed robbery squad that deals with issues of armed robbery within the regions. If you look, for instance, in the Northeast region, they have a lot of armed robbery issues and security concerns. And so these are some of the issues that he's been raising
whilst here, but he has quite a tall order about some 3 more centers he needs to visit before the close of the day.
Thank you very much, Komala Klucha. He's with the former president, John Mahama. And that's how we end the news here on 3FM. Our top stories. Ghana Revenue Authority to strictly enforce income tax law for Ghanaians who live abroad but spend accumulated 183 days in the country to keep up for revenue shortfalls. Also, government hopeful of receiving third tranche of $360 million from IMF in barely 2 months, but the global financial institution is once again pointing to the need for an agreement with Ghana's external creditors. My name is Beatrice Adu. Thank you very much for joining us today. Log on to 3news.com for more news. Have a good afternoon.